So this is something that I think only really old school fans will recognize, and I mean old school, like 2015 when I first started this channel. In my last video, which was episode 2 of this series, watch it if you haven't, I began using a new intro which included this image of a plague doctor. Again, if you were with me back in 2015, then you'll remember how viral of a thing this was back then, and no, I had no idea it was going to be making a comeback this year. I actually put that intro together as sort of a throwback to my old stuff, and at the time, this new video hadn't been posted. Now, I know that most of you are probably a little confused, so this segment is going to serve as both an introduction for some and a follow-up for others. So, what is it we just saw? This, back in 2015, was probably the biggest viral video of its genre, and at first we didn't exactly know what it was called. One of its first appearances online was from this channel, who 4 years later I still can't pronounce, and as you can see here, the title isn't binary. The thing is though, this isn't the whole story. While this version was uploaded back in May of that year, the clip really didn't explode until around October/November after a Swedish tech blog called Gadgets released an article titled, "This Creepy Puzzle Arrived in Our Mail." The article describes a strange package from Poland complete with pictures of what was inside, a disc with strange code. Of course, they also uploaded the contents of said disc onto their site, and sure enough, it was the video of the plague doctor. So once this all got out, the internet went into a complete frenzy trying to figure out what this was all about. They began to notice things, codes, symbols, messages even hidden within the ear-piercing audio of what was now called 11BX1371. I'm seriously cutting out a lot of details here, but trust me, this thing was a roller coaster ride back when it was happening. The codes were figured out rather quickly, but that still didn't explain who created this and most importantly, why. Some worried that the video was some kind of threat, while others assumed it must be some kind of viral marketing for an upcoming film or TV show. At the time, there genuinely weren't any answers, so people assumed that whoever created this account was responsible, given that the upload predates the Gadgets article. The guy behind this account denied having created the video and maintained that even when interviewed by mainstream media. There were other people of interest, but ultimately no conclusions were drawn. One person in particular, however, did stand out. An account by the name of Parker Wright also uploaded the 11BX video in September of 2015, and although everything lined up thematically, there was still the issue of upload dates. A few months later, however, Parker Wright decided to come forward as the video's true creator, and while at first this was challenged, Parker was able to produce undeniable evidence that he was, in fact, the person responsible for the piece. Over time, Parker would go on to create 2 more videos of a similar nature, and even a website. Eventually, he began doing interviews, but from what I understand, he never did publicly give an explanation as to what his videos mean.
And I've seen things throughout my entire life that have been kind of painful, disinformation, a type of gleeful ignorance, where people go about life happily blind. They think that they know things because it feels good, and the intent of my work is to make everything uncomfortable for them, because life is uncomfortable. It's not something that we can go through with a smile on our face and think that bad things aren't happening.
As you can see, there is a basic description of intent, stuff about moral panic and jumping to conclusions without doing proper research. But 4 years later, not everything has been revealed, and honestly, that seems like the point. So this brings us to 2019. On April 7th, Parker uploaded a new video by the name of 11B451T8, probably the most reminiscent of the original 11BX yet. This time we see the Plague Doctor character in a snowy forest, joined by a counterpart, while distorted audio plays and subliminal messages litter the screen.
13, 8, 4, 18, 16, 1, 5, 15, 9, 14.
As expected, there are many ways to pick this video apart, which I'm sure you guys noticed. But just to point out some basic ones, what you're looking at here right now are hidden messages produced by the video's audio. As I said, I am leaving out a huge chunk of information here for time, but definitely look into all of this yourself because out of all of the things I've covered over the last 4 years, this one is definitely up there for me.
Hello Rainbot, I've recently discovered your videos, and now I'm a fan. I have a possible topic for your YouTube videos. I found out about ElsaGate, and by just pure coincidence made a typo that scared the shit out of me. I accidentally typed LZW, and it autofilled to this weird gibberish. I'm really confused, and I don't know what to make out of it. It would be really cool if you could cover it in your videos. Thank you.
So I really didn't know what I was going to find when I decided to look into the suggestion. Surely enough, typing LZW did in fact lead to some strange results.
Yellow. Your trigger is alphabet soup. Pink. Your trigger is Pokemon.
While this was interesting and all, there was something off about this to me, but not in the way that you'd expect. The thing is, it wasn't exactly clear where these things came from originally, and if you're familiar with creepy coded internet shit, then you'll notice that this is a pretty entry-level code that pretty much just requires you to copy/paste in order to decipher it. With all that in mind, I went looking, and in the comments I found this. A link to a Twitter page that predates the top result by several months. Spooky things get re-uploaded all the time, so I chose to disregard what I initially found as people just stealing content. Anyway, so now that I arrived at this mysteriously linked Twitter page, I decided to give it a look. It was created back in April of 2017 and seemed to only be active for a short amount of time before going dark. The page featured pictures and more codes similar to what I described early on, along with a few other elements. A quick Google search for the page's username revealed discussions surrounding it, most of which also dated back to 2017. One page even featured a deep dive description of pretty much everything posted to the Twitter account, along with links to videos which, as you guessed, were the same as the ones initially suggested to me. So far, the videos I've come across have all been unlisted and had their comment sections disabled, but despite this, the videos actually have a pretty substantial amount of views, all things considered. I'll fully admit, I'm not entirely sure how these unlisted videos got so many views given that the Twitter page only has a couple hundred followers, and none of the threads discussing it seem all that widespread. I'm pretty certain that I must be missing something, probably something big, but here's why I don't necessarily care. If you look into this and the themes and certain threads made about it, it does come off entirely tinfoil hatty. I mean, there's oftentimes a notable difference between what's meant to be creative fiction by means of internet mystery and the ramblings of an off-the-rails conspiracy theorist, but this one really blurs the lines for me, and I'm just not into it. If you pick things apart, there are messages about things like brainwashing, MKUltra, and somehow linking these things to the ElsaGate controversy at the time. I'm not sure if this was entirely made as a troll, commentary, or an ARG in poor taste, but I get the impression that this was made to incite moral panic just for the sake of doing so. Guys, if you want to look into this and get enjoyment out of it strictly as entertainment, then power to you, but don't assume that this is anything more than it is, as we already have enough misinformation floating out there. With all that said, let's move on.
Dude, this thing is weird. Just
Somebody's call, please.
I found this video in my recommendations. You know, it seems fake to me, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Maybe you could do a video on it or just watch it. At Jaylee's Art.
This entry centers on a single video from 2017, one depicting a man recording his yard late at night as someone or something approaches from the bushes. The video in its entirety lasts nearly 7 minutes long, so for the sake of time, I'm going to summarize the rest of what takes place. The man recording, known as Rick, gets his friend Mike on the phone to explain what's taking place, continuously reiterating to him how unbelievable the footage is going to look once he sees it. He also describes what he's seeing in a number of ways: humanoid, demonic, gargoyle-like, etc. In a slightly confused tone, Mike asks Rick if what he's seeing is human, which he denies. At one point, Rick even mentions that this is one of a million things that people wouldn't believe him about, and then he goes on to explain that 3 nights prior, he awoke to the sound of a door opening, convinced that whatever was out there was the cause. The video closes with Mike reciting a prayer for Rick, and then the video abruptly ends as the so-called creature exits the frame. It's important to note that at no point does it ever approach Rick, and for the most part, it doesn't shift from its position. Before I give my opinion on what's going on here, let's take a look at the rest of Rick's channel. Of course, the clip we just discussed is by far his most popular, with over 500,000 views. The rest are, and I mean this in the nicest way possible, mundane. They're videos of Rick singing, playing instruments, pretty much all of them are music related and date back to 2016. There is, however, an exception with the last 2 videos, one of which is addressed to another YouTuber, seemingly made to shut down criticism over something that I'm clearly missing, and the other video of this kind appears to be supplementary to the one I just described. Now, I'm sure you're wondering why I didn't bother finding out what these last 2 clips were about, and the thing is, I kind of did. For whatever reason, the community that seemed to have picked up on this the most has been Bigfoot enthusiasts, and the video of Rick lifting a car is a rebuttal to some kind of observation made by a Bigfoot YouTuber. As you all know, that sort of thing just simply isn't my thing, so I'd rather not venture down that avenue. Based on everything that I've seen/found so far, and the fact that Rick has pretty much never addressed this thing on his channel since 2017, I'm of the belief that this wasn't an attempt at some kind of story meant to last a long period of time. If anything, this does feel much more like a simple hoax, but it is admittedly a bit strange that nothing else in Rick's record would hint towards this sort of behavior. So if not a hoax, then what? Well, honestly, there isn't anything at all in this video even slightly suggesting the possibility of something paranormal. What we see here is off in the distance and in the dark, but from what I could make out, there was nothing inhuman about it. Pardon my French because, you know, I never use foul language or anything like that, but this seems much more like a crackhead that's been chilling around the dude's property. A naked crackhead. All jokes aside, I obviously have no proof of this, but as far as I can see, this is either a complete hoax or someone trespassing who for some reason isn't into clothes.